Hello everyone, my name is Kok Jun and I'm here to talk to you about an upcoming concert by the Singapore Symphony Orchestra, the Butterfly Lovers. This concert will be held on the 4th and the 5th of November here in the Esplanade Concert Hall, and it will feature Lo Junhong on the violin as well as SSO's very own Chan Yong Han and Ng Pei Sian on the violin and cello respectively. There are three pieces in this concert: Largo and Vivace by Leong Yoon Pin, The Butterfly Lovers of course by Chee Kong and He Zhanhao, as well as There and Back by Professor Chee Kong. And in this talk, I'll be bringing you through these pieces and I will share with you some background on them, how they came about, and whether there were any particular inspirations behind them. Also talk a little bit about my own thoughts on the piece and suggestions on how you may choose to listen to them. Now, the first piece of the concert is Largo and Vivace by Mr. Leong Yoon Pin. For those who don't know, Mr. Leong was born in 1931 and is a pioneer composer in Singapore, a very important figure in the music community in Singapore. He was actually the first composer in residence of the Singapore Symphony Orchestra. I always say that it's a pity I never got to meet him, as he passed away before I could, but his legacy lives on not only through his music, but also through his students and the many students of his students now who are practicing musicians and composers in Singapore. Now, many of Mr. Leong's works features both Western music influences as well as Asian music materials. And in the first part of this work, the Largo, Mr. Leong used a tone roll as the basis of his composition. Now, this was a very popular technique in the early parts of 1900s in Germany, where a composer would organize all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, and that is all white and black keys on the piano, for example, and from which he would create a pattern and he would develop the music as such. Now, Mr. Leong did the same thing in the opening of the Largo section, and I actually went to the piano to check that it was all 12 notes, but he didn't use it in a strict way that the early German composers would. Instead, he broke free from this particular pattern, and it shows signs that he is not only influenced by this technique, but he's actually trying to develop it further. Now, according to Mr. Leong himself, this opening texture was supposed to be atonal and is meant to convey a soothing feeling. Honestly telling you, it did not have a soothing effect on me, as I sense a lot of tension between the lines and the harmony, but I'll let you experience it for yourself, whether you find it soothing or not. Now, the second section is a Vivace, which is a short and fast-paced one. So here, Mr. Leong used the rhythm from a Fujian folk song. Now, I'm not sure which particular song he used, but from listening to this particular movement, I can guess that this folk song would be quick-paced and constantly moving, probably like a dance-like and a light-hearted one. Now, the second piece of this concert almost needs no introduction. It is the Butterfly Lovers Violin Concerto. Now, a testament to how famous this piece is would be how I heard of it in the first place. I did not hear it in school or in any music class, but from my parents who were actually watching this movie one day on this particular story, and they were raving to me about how the soundtrack of this movie is such a classic and such a great one. So very briefly, the story of this piece actually follows Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai, and they were star-crossed lovers whose families objected of their love. Now, eventually, the story has a tragic ending as Liang Shanbo dies of sadness, while Zhu Yingtai subsequently commits suicide to join him. But the silver lining is that it's said that they became then butterflies and they were finally together forever. Now, the music is crafted programmatically, meaning that it follows this story. So you may choose to guess at every point of time which part of the story they are at. Now, many listeners will be familiar with the very famous flute solo at the beginning, as well as the theme melody, which, when it comes back at the end, a lot of people believe it signifies that Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai are finally together as butterflies. But this piece is a lot more than that. Interestingly, the composers used Chinese opera elements in this work, and one of my favorite moments is a little past the middle, during which there's a passage that is inspired by this Chinese opera style called Jing Da Man Chang. This roughly translates as a tight accompaniment with slow singing, and you'll be able to recognize this section in the music when the bangu, which is a unique Chinese drum that is used in Chinese opera, it appears. So you hear that the violin solo will be playing in a free and almost recitative manner, while the string section holds a very tight tremolo to kind of form this contrast of a tight accompaniment and free singing, you'll be able to hear a sense of tension and contrast, and it's used a lot in climactic moments in Chinese opera, and it's very well placed within this concerto. Now, the last piece is There and Back by Professor Chee Kong. Prof. Ho is a professor of composition at the Yong Siew Toh Conservatory of Music, where he's currently also Vice Dean. He was also my teacher back when I was in Yong Siew Toh, and I had a chance to speak to Prof about this piece, and I would love to share a little bit more about it. Now, this piece is a double concerto for violin and cello, and it was first commissioned and premiered by the Singapore Chinese Orchestra. And it received the accolade of Best Work of the Year on the Straits Times, and it was described as a rare and perfect marriage of Western and Chinese music. Now, for those who know, many of Prof. Ho's works are narrative in nature, and it explores musical conversation, and this piece explores a lot of that. Not only do you have the dialogue between the two soloists, you also have the dialogue and conversations between the soloist and the orchestra, as well as within the orchestra itself. One of my favorite moments in this piece is the slow segment in the middle. So over there, the instruments in the orchestra would then become soloists themselves, and they will offer pieces of dialogues to the soloists. And it creates a very still and meditative, but also a very intimate texture, and it's very chamber-like. So do listen out for that. And as I mentioned above, this piece was initially written with a Chinese orchestra accompaniment. And the point of a good adaptation is when a piece is written in such a way that it feels like it's the original. So I had a chance to look at this score already, and I can say that this piece is no different. You might feel that it was written for the symphony orchestra in the first place. But if you listen carefully, there are many moments in this piece where the Chinese orchestra influence, I think, are deliberately still placed with there. So listen out for the prepared piano, which is a piano that is fitted carefully with objects inside to alter the sound. And with the prepared piano, together with elements of the orchestra like the woodwinds as well as the string pizzicato, it kind of creates a different sound that reminds me, personally, of Chinese plucked strings instruments. So have a listen at that. And with that, I've come to the end of this pre-concert talk. I certainly hope it gave you some insight on the music that will be featured in this concert, and I definitely hope that you'll be able to join us here. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon.